Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Mark Silvestri Day, so we'll be looking at the next issue in his Wolverine run from the early 90s. This is issue 44, cover dated late August 1991. Why late August? Because at this point in time, Wolverine is a bi-weekly series on sale twice a month, announced on the cover. But we're not going to be looking at issue 44 apart from the cover and one page, because this is another fill-in issue done by a great artist, Larry Stroman, but this is the focus of today every week is on Mark Silvestri, so unfortunately Larry Stroman's going to have to move by the wayside. So real quick, just want to talk about this cover, which I think is an awesome cover. I'm somewhat convinced that maybe this is just Silvestri himself, inking himself. I could be wrong, could still be Dan Green, because they're almost similar in their inking styles. But there's no signature that I can really find on this cover, so I don't know for sure. Cool looking cover. So even though Silvestri doesn't do the story, he does the cover. So there's a certain level of consistency there. And as you'll see when we open it up real quick, I did want to show you this super awesome first page, which is by Silvestri. No other credit here, so I feel like he also inked this himself. And just a kind of cool kind of, almost Wolfman shot of Wolverine, right, with the full moon in the background, right? That's kind of the vibe. Always found that he looks like the Wolfman in Monster Squad. I think I mentioned that for issue 43. I'm mentioning again because that's there's a connection there visually for me that I kind of realized in these past few reviews. So yeah, Monster Squad Wolfman. Just a cool Mark Silvestri shot here. Once again, printed on that just slightly better quality and thicker newsprint. And the colors sit better and the ink sits better, even though it does get absorbed just a little bit, just so it's not fully black or piercing black, I guess, whatever you want to call that. Just a great pinup, but that is just an introduction to the rest here. So the comic itself, the story with Larry Stroman, is actually 22 pages, so they just, I guess, threw this in to keep a bit of continuity between last issue with Silvestri, this one, and of course next issue will be the return of Silvestri as well, which is the issue we're going to look at. So we are looking at Wolverine issue 45, actually early September, and that is from 1991 as well. Kind of run-of-the-mill cover here, just kind of telling you who the guest stars are in here. If you're not smart enough to figure it out, it's been spelled out for you, featuring Sabretooth, Lady Deathstrike, and the Hunter from Darkness. Silvestri in green inked, so Silvestri drew it, green inked the cover. Claws over Times Square. So again, not that much to say about the cover. Let's open her up and we'll have a look inside, and I'll talk more about the art inside. So credits: script, Larry Hama; breakdowns, Mark Silvestri; finishes, Dan Green; lettering, Pat Brosseau; and coloring, I assume that's still Steve Buccellato or Buccellato, I think is how you say that. Remember, with names, if I pronounce them wrong, please let me know in the comments. I'll try to correct that as best as I can. So basically we've got a cool kind of establishing shot of, I would call this almost a Batman shot, Batman looming over the city on the corner of a building. But in this case, we've got Wolverine smoking a cigar. I love it. The anatomy, the feathering, everything on here is just top notch. Mark Silvestri's still doing a good job. If he's only doing breakdowns, I think him and Dan Green really have something going there, because the art style stays pretty consistent. It's like they kind of know each other really well. And just one kind of funny aspect of this is just how many chimneys are smoking here, and how many Mark Silvestri is actually like drawn out. Creates a lot of layering and depth in the image for sure, but when you really pay attention, it's a little odd, I guess. Good opening page though, for sure. So again, how can Wolverine just jump into, down into a city? We don't know. He's got superhuman instincts, I guess. It's a very comic booky thing. Not very realistic, but I guess, you suspend disbelief with these characters, right? Wolverine is not known to have any kind of specific super strength or super... I mean, he could heal, but I imagine, if he fell from this height and hurt himself, it would take a little while to heal whatever broken ribs, back, bones that he might have. But maybe the adamantium spares him from broken bones? I don't know. I'm going too much into this. So... good storytelling, overlapping panels, right? This scene kind of reminds me of the first issue of Cyberforce, right? Ribclaw pretty much does the same thing in that first issue. Weird use of screen tone here, just all of a sudden. Not saying I hate it. It kind of works, but just odd. But again, still looks like Silvestri, but I will say that I feel like there's almost a slightly, even though it was already kind of rough, a rougher edge to the look of this issue here, almost Jansen-y in certain parts, and by that I mean Klaus Janson, right? So we've got a character here who's ready to assassinate someone. Not quite sure. As I said, not following the storyline too much, although I'll point out some things here and there. So we go back. There's a lot of stories going on, B, C, D stories during this Wolverine run. So we're going back very often to Albert and LCD, who's the kind of like little cyborg girl that was hanging around with Wolverine. Albert being the cybernetic clone that was created to destroy Wolverine. And the Morlocks down here just kind of watching over what he's doing there. It's kind of again, when we delve into the Morlocks and the Albert and LCD situation in the storyline, it feels much more like a horror comic. Here I feel like, man, like if that's not inspired by, you know, Frankenstein, I don't know what it is inspired by, because that's a pretty Frankenstein-y kind of horror kind of scene. You know, seeing this little girl, even though she's a robot, with parts of her body kind of gone and stuff. It's a little horrific. Got some body horror. Excuse me. Sabretooth, really weird in this shot here. The face almost looks like Adam Driver, or a very exaggerated version of him, or like a Neanderthal or something. Just not typical. I don't know what happened here. Not a typical Sabretooth face. Not on model. So some event is going to happen here, and what that event is, we're about to find out. They've brought it all the way from Canada, in the wilds of Canada, the legendary Stalker of the North Woods. So it's almost a bit of a King Kong kind of story here, where they've taken a creature out of its natural habitat and brought it here. And let's talk about story writing for a bit, right? So this is a good example in this issue of, you know, you establish certain characters or create certain characters for the story, you know, issues ago, and maybe you just created it for that moment and stuff, but eventually as you move ahead, you figure, oh, I can bring these characters back. And when you do that, what starts to happen is that the story starts to write itself, right? The characters kind of start to dictate what's going on. It's a funny thing. I've experienced it myself with my own comics, where, you know, in the first few issues of Big Baby, I established kind of an oppositional character to Big Baby, right? And kind of got rid of him. And, you know, either nebulously or not specifically that the character died or anything like that. And then later on, I figured as I was writing story, I'm like, man, I could really bring these characters back and extrapolate and give more detail to them. And as I was doing that, I just found the stories started writing themselves. Why am I talking about this here? Well, this character, the Hunter in Darkness, was introduced in the early 30s of Wolverine, right? So not knowing specifically that he was going to come back at any point, but I guess Larry Hama, you know, likes to create those connections. Maybe he knew right away, but I feel like this happened later, and he's like, oh, that'd be a great way to create, like I said, connections to past storylines. Obviously, Sabretooth is an element of that too, but he's, you know, from obviously not being introduced in Wolverine, he's been around for a while. He's a foil for Wolverine. It makes sense that he's going to come back very often. I gotta say, Sabretooth, kind of disguised here as, I don't know what, an early 90s hip-hop artist. Just the clothing here is hilarious on Sabretooth. Oh, he's got the lady's glasses as well, that he stole them from previously. Jeez. Great angle, hard angle to do. I think it works well here. And again, look at some of the inking. It's just, man, they're doing this fast. Acme Cage Co. That's funny. Of course, Wolverine's not going to be too happy seeing his buddy from issue 34, I think, or from the early 30s, in a cage like that. And so this person who was, over here, we thought was going to assassinate someone, well, apparently is trying to kill this Hunter in the Darkness, actually. So the animal that's on display in Times Square. Obviously, Wolverine's not having any of it, so he jumps into the fray, going to help out the Hunter. And Sabretooth sees Wolverine, so he knows it's his time to come out and play. And another character that was introduced earlier, Lady Deathstrike. You know, she is, again, another character that Larry Hama brings back. A connection to past issues, right? So really creating, you know, kind of a larger arc within the smaller arcs. Which is why I think this Larry Hama run on Wolverine kind of sticks in my head. At least this run up to, you know, the early 50s with Mark Silvestri. It really is one of my favorite runs on Wolverine. And we get the big action moment here, obviously between Lady Deathstrike, Sabretooth, Wolverine, and the Hunter in Darkness. So all those kind of, you know, animalistic, bladey characters, cutty guys. I don't know what else you want to call them. I think I mentioned in past reviews, you know, very often Wolverine has to have characters who somehow, you know, he's a character who cuts, and they should be able to cut and stab him as well, right? It's kind of a Wolverine trope. He rarely goes against characters with guns and stuff, right? It's always other clawed characters. Speaking of claws, not going to shit on the art at all. And again, it's a bi-weekly schedule at this point, so you got to be getting through those pretty quickly. But man, what's going on here with the claws? That's kind of an odd angle and just unfinished kind of look there. As opposed to this, which I think works really well, even though it's probably drawn very quickly. The demonic face there on Deathstrike. Always an odd character to me, Lady Deathstrike, with her long fingernails. And I think this page here, I just have to mention the coloring. The cool blues and stuff. I think it works really well. It evokes a certain time of night. Of course, the full moon, right? Because it's always a full moon comic books. But I just think this page is just well laid out. It's kind of like one of those splash with insert panels, right? And the Hunter in Darkness looks really cool here. Kind of a cool werewolf figure. And just this little bit of silhouette in the foreground helps create that sense of depth. I think is clever from Silvestri. And he creates those three planes, right? Those three simple planes. Foreground, middle ground, the debris, background, our character here. Probably middle ground as well. And background would be the moon and maybe the back, these little buildings back here. But again, I think the most effective thing on this page is the color scheme, right? It just evokes a certain time of night, and I think it works really well. Yes, Sabretooth is just not consistent in here. All of a sudden he's got big wolf ears, or cat ears, I guess. It's just, yeah. I feel like this is maybe a drawing that Marc Silvestri did very quickly, and that Green interpreted a bit more and threw in those huge, you know, elven ears, which I don't think Sabretooth really has. I think he's got pointy ears, but they're kind of human-sized. He almost looks more like a bat, or like man bat right here. But there you go. There you have it. That is the end of that issue. Cool Michael Golden art here, right? That was a clever idea. I thought that back in the day when Destro went from silver to gold, like, makes sense, right? We've got another cool Wolverine pinup here, double page, by Art T-Bear. So again, Art T-Bear slowly moving more towards, I guess, his Jim Lee kind of rip-off look. But I still think he looks pretty cool here and still has somewhat of a distinctive style from Jim Lee still at this point, right? The faces are still kind of different. Giving Wolverine the pointy ears there too, so that's a little odd. I will give him points though for having the cigar, you know, just kind of standing in a pool of crap in the sewers with rats, still smoking a cigar. I will say I feel like this is the weight is a bit off here. It's got a very long leg. I feel like he'd be falling into the water there. Excuse me. Allergies. No, I don't know. So there you have it. Wolverine issue 45, early September 1991. What were you doing back then? Were you reading this comic as a kid? Let me know in the comments. If you have any answers to some of the questions I may have asked during the review, please comment as well. Those of you who are subscribed, I appreciate you being here day in and day out. Thank you for your support and checking out my content. Those of you who are not subscribed but who are viewing, that's like 78% of you, please, if you don't mind, it would really help us out if you just hit the subscribe button. It takes a second and helps get us out there and viewed by other people who hopefully are into the same kind of content as you and I are. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope everyone out there has an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.